Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of our Let's Play of 80 Days. I am Nerdstalgic and currently we are aboard the riverboat Dark Queen on day 67 heading towards New Orleans. So our goal of London by day 80 is still out there for the taking, but our window of opportunity, I suppose you could say, is closing. So let's see if we can get there. The common rooms and lounges of the Dark Queen were full of gamblers, enticing passengers into games of dice or cards. The river ports had been passing more and more regulation, and the cheats and crooks had all fled the unregulated waters of the Mississippi to ply their trade. Fool and his money are soon parted, so the saying went. I had little pity to waste on fools, though Monsieur Fogg clearly found the entire operation distasteful. Somehow, out of all that, we lost relations with Fogg, which doesn't make a lot of sense. New Orleans threatened by refugees. I see. Captain Latour was clearly quite cozy with the gamblers and had something of their attitude himself. I'll wager I can get us to New Orleans in 3 days rather than 4. He shouted at the room at large. Who will take the wager? Interesting. So we could bet him that he would get us there in 3 days. It's almost like paying him to try to go faster. But then again, if we lose out on that, I don't know. We could use an extra day, though. And the captain seemed quite sure of himself. 100 pounds on it, I called. The captain whooped before loping off to the engine room. Watch and learn, my friends. You'll see a record made today. Well, hopefully we don't blow the boiler like we did in our first playthrough. Greetings, Mademoiselle Greenwood. Honestly, I don't know what I'm doing aboard this thing. Yeah. Doesn't matter. Okay. Brazilian snuff. Here, have a pinch of snuff. That'll make her chatty, won't it? She can't talk about New Orleans. Apparently, bad things happen there. Okay. I think we're done here. Yeah, we're definitely not going to be going to Haiti. I think that's pretty far out of the way. So my plan is still to go to New Orleans, then bounce up to New York City and gain passage across to London from there. Captain Latour ordered the Calliope to play a tune as he mustered the crew and gave them the order to push the engines to their maximum limit. The coal shovelers scowled at the extra work involved, but the captain ignored them magnanimously. The Dark Queen's crew seemed competent enough, but as the boilers whistled and screamed, the ship began to make ominous, keening noises. Oh boy. Oh boy. I began to think better of the wager and tried to convince the captain to renege, to little avail. I had a terrible feeling about the entire enterprise. "Keep shoveling," Captain Latour shouted, tapping dials and muttering orders. He squeezed more oil onto the engine crank. We'll be in New Orleans by sundown, which was when something began to make a screaming noise. I turned about, looking astern, seeing smoke issuing from a crack in the metal, and then it was too late. The rear boiler exploded. The entire ship seemed to shudder and convulse as the sailors screamed and wept and burned. It was hell in the literal rather than the metaphysical sense, and I was in it. We did not reach New Orleans that day, and I wondered if we ever would. You know, you'd think I would learn about playing with the boiler engines in this game. Oh boy. Oh boy. Greetings, Captain. Passepartout, you slimy dog. You're the slimy dog. You're the one that said you could do it. I'd really like to know about New York to London, to be honest with you. It's Monday, now it's Tuesday. It's going to be Tuesday. None of the sailors died yesterday, though some no doubt wish they had. A much chastened Captain Latour moored the ship and organized boats to take them to doctors ashore. Monsieur Fogg and I were unharmed, at least physically. There was no music or laughter on the Dark Queen's deck, and even the hardened gamblers played in respectful silence. Oh my god. That's probably the end right there. The Dark Queen continued her journey down the Mississippi, though at crawling pace. Captain Latour ordered only 2 of the 5 remaining boilers fired and had offered double pay to the stokers to induce them. It is my fault, I confessed to Monsieur Fogg in anguish. I took his damned wager. My master regarded me thoughtfully. Captain Latour took a gamble, and this time he lost. That is all. I was speechless at his cold-heartedness, thinking of the screams of the sailors. Passepartout, Fogg said softly, seeing my concern. We all must gamble. The only difference is, in our calculation of the odds. Oh boy. What is your wish, master? All is well with you, I trust. New York. Okay. Well, we'll see if we can make it. Day 72. That's pretty bad. We've got 8 days to get to London. We docked at New Orleans when the sun was low in the sky, glinting over the brackish water of the river and bathing the French and Spanish colonial villas of the city in soft yellow light. Captain made a beeline for us like a weary ghost, but I made sure to avoid him, hustling Monsieur Fogg onto the wharf before our ghastly wager might be settled. I wanted neither his self-pity nor his advice. Okay, let's sell some stuff. Like cylinder, harmonica, safety harness, Smith & Wesson. See where we can get. New York arrives Monday. Yeah, it's pretty much going to be game. Guess we can try to get there as fast as we can. Tomorrow at noon, huh? Well, let's explore. I browsed around, my ears open, investigating the various ways in which we might continue. Stay overnight. We leave tomorrow at noon. I met Death. Oh, we've already done this one before. In a smoke-wreathed, red-lit bar in New Orleans, as the jazz band struck up another tune, he offered to buy me a bourbon. Perhaps in 20 or 30 years, I replied archly, as some of the other patrons snickered. Death pulled off his mask to reveal handsome cafe au lait features and dark green eyes, and then extended a skeletal hand to me. A fine costume, I remarked. Merci, mon cher. I am Death at our neighborhood Mardi Gras, and I am practicing my role. He took my proffered hand and brought the back of it to his lips for a gallant kiss. He flicked me a rather unmistakable look under his red lashes. I pretended not to see his look or the sensuous tilt to his mouth, and he laughed. You must call me Octave, mon cher. I am Passepartout. I dipped my head slightly, an appellation as well as a burden. Then I will choose another for you, he decided, with a slanted grin. A special name for you and me tonight. Laurent, for you look a bit like a Laurent. Was Laurent better than Jean or Jean? Oh, well, it was too late to argue the matter. Octave told me he was a free person of color now. I was aghast to realize he had been a slave before the Civil War, and indeed still worked as a servant for the very same family. Are you happy working for them? I demanded, trying to imagine myself in his place. He sighed heavily. Young Claude is a horror, and Alette little better, but little Henri is still a sweet child. He carded a hand through his thick black hair. They are my half-siblings through their papa. Then he is your papa as well, I said with dawning horror. Ah, I would not say that, he corrected gently. He may have sired me, but he was my owner, and not a father to me. You sound so surprised, my sweet Laurent. Ugh. Where do you think we mixed folk sprung from? I'll wager 3/4 of this bar knows their white relatives downriver, even if their cousins by blood don't acknowledge them. Surely you want more from life than servitude. I have my life, don't I? His eyes flashed with anger. I joined the 1st Louisiana Native Guards Regiment after New Orleans was captured by the Union. I still wake up some mornings not sure if I'm alive or dead. You're alive, I reassured him, reaching out for his shoulder. Octave wiped the anger from his expression with the ease of long practice and smiled a slow, dazzling smile. You look sad, mon cher. What a fool I am to confess these things to you when I would much rather see you smile. Confession can be cathartic. Oh, mon cher. His smile turned wicked. Would you absolve me if I confess my sins? You are incorrigible, monsieur. You must leave a trail of broken hearts behind you. You are toying with me, mon cher. He laughed dramatically. I am utterly in your thrall. An intriguing notion to have death in my thrall. Alas, the hour had grown late, and we had to part. Octave walked me upriver to the border of the garden district where Monsieur Fogg had taken lodgings. Amongst the American pavonus, the moon shone down on the Mississippi, and Octave leaned towards me. I turned my face... Oh, there is someone else, I said firmly. I'm sorry. Do not be sorry, mon cher. He stroked my cheek once and let his hand drop. I hope they know how lucky they are to have you. Thank you for a remarkable evening. Think of me sometimes if you think of New Orleans. Well, there's no reason really to tarry. Let's go ahead and go. So when's it going to arrive? Saturday. So it'll arrive in 2 days. It'll be day 75. If nothing really weird happens. The Piedmont airline from New Orleans was not, in fact, an airline at all, but, according to its advertising, the fastest railway in America. What could be better for getting us to the edge of the Atlantic? Winning our bet would now require a miracle, but we still had every chance of a decent showing. Greetings, Monsieur Lagarde. Tickets, please. My mother always wanted to travel aboard the Henrietta from New York to London. Great. No. You looked a bit like a center forward, I thought. Well, we don't need to know anything else. So now we know how to get to London, and I think it costs £5,000. Not sure how fast it is, though. We'll see. Hopefully pretty fast. We settled ourselves in a carriage with one other occupant, an extremely large man who introduced himself as Charlie Sullivan, a lad from Birmingham, who was most impressively sculpted, especially around the neck and upper arms. I asked where he was going, and he replied, New York, I was boxing, I'm going home. I could see he was most likely an excellent boxer, assuming he knew how to operate those colossal arms of his. However, Monsieur Fogg's interest had been increasing sharply throughout the conversation. You are trained, he demanded keenly, or self-taught? I've got a manager, Sullivan replied. He tells me what to hit. Excellent, excellent, Monsieur Fogg enthused. I want to hear all about it. I sat back and enjoyed the conversation. The details of boxing are more intricate than one might expect. A ruffian sport for certain, but with as much finesse and fidelity as, say, the preparation of a good shirt collar. Little did I know how the details I heard would come to be of use to me. I hope we're not going to get into a fight. I just want to make it to London by day 80. That's all I want. That Mr. Sullivan will, I think, go very far indeed, Monsieur Fogg opined as I brought him kippers from the dining car. You seem to have the physique, I suggested. Not just the physique, my master replied. Physique is not the secret. His description of the transferal of weight from foot to foot was very well understood indeed. So you are a boxer, monsieur? I saw the shutters of his conversation beginning to come down. I went to school, yes. Boxing school? He blinked at me. I think France a very curious country at times. He attacked his kippers with some gusto. You should fight him, he said. I backed slowly away, thinking perhaps I could escape into the guard's van and hide until we reached New York. My master looked up. You needn't be alarmed. I can teach you to box. Perhaps you should fight him yourself. He looked most uncomfortable at the suggestion. I think no, Passepartout. It is a young man's game. I would very much like to live to be an old man, I replied testily. Monsieur Fogg considered a moment and then sighed. If you are unwilling, we should not do it, he replied. Certainly you would most likely be brained. It would be a pity. He returned to his paper. I quietly praised my lucky stars and slipped away before he could insist. I had shifted my weight successfully and avoided being beaten to a pulp. Come early evening, we arrived in Washington, where several passengers unloaded along with trunks and baggage. We waited until we departed once more for the final day's journey into New York. And apparently Fogg is pissed that I wouldn't box that guy. The journey was brief. The Atlantic flashed in sunrise, beckoning us onwards. We were so close to home, but could we cross in 5 days? Well, could we indeed? No departures today. How long does it take? Arrives Monday? We can. Yes, go. Should be able to make it there because Sunday would be the 76th, then Monday would be the day 77. Unless something weird happens. We left New York aboard the Henrietta, an old Confederate airship converted to a transatlantic mail carrier. We would reach London in 3 days, barring any unexpected delay. Adventurer Fogg expected back shortly. Man, we might actually do it. I didn't think we would get there. The ocean tore along beneath us. I enjoyed talking to no one. There was nothing I needed to know, no one to charm, flatter, or beguile in giving us aid. There was only the wind and the time, and we could control neither. Passepartout, my master demanded. Make us go faster, if you would. I approached the captain. Faster, you say. It can be done, but it would destroy the engines. We want no risk, no danger. Then I promise you we'll be in London in 2 more days. Sorry, Fogg. Do you remember what happened last time? Monsieur Fogg looked out of the observation deck windows with perfect calm, as though we were not, with every passing moment, drawing closer and closer to London. My nerves were in shreds, and I was nearly chewing the rails with anticipation. I spent the remaining time embarking on the writing of this account, though I found already the details of our early adventures had grown vague and indistinct. It was day 76. We had barely 100 hours remaining to return home. We tethered at the airship dock in Hyde Park and felt for the first time in 77 days the feel of English soil under our shoes. At long last we had returned to London, and in time to win the wager. We did it! We made it, guys. Hooray for us, I guess. I was really kind of worried whenever we couldn't get to New York City going straight across, and we had to dip down to New Orleans, and the ship blew its boiler. I was really kind of worried, but it all worked out. I seized my master by the collar and threw him into one of the steam carriages idling on the banks of the Serpentine in Hyde Park. "To the Reform Club," I shouted. Before ejecting the driver from his seat and taking the wheel myself, I threw a lever and opened the throttle. The driver's curses were drowned by the shrieking whistle of the boilers. "There's no need for such unseemly haste, Passepartout," my master noted, but I was a man possessed. The streets of London seemed quaint and old-fashioned as they flashed past my well-traveled eyes. The carriages were mostly horse-drawn, and gas lamps rather than electricity lit our way as we raced down Pall Mall. The carriage barely shuddered to a steam-hissing stop before I dragged my master from his seat and up the steps to the imposing doors of the Reform Club. I released him only when we reached the great saloon, where my master's erstwhile friends stood from their chairs, gaping in an attitude of great shock. Monsieur Fogg only straightened a little and said in his calm voice, "Gentlemen, here I am." The room erupted into cheers, and I staggered to the nearest chair and collapsed heavily into it, my hands shaking. I realized, as though a spell had suddenly broken, that we had succeeded, and my master had won £20,000. With the 4,000 we began with, the debt built up from the banks along the way, and our remaining funds, it was a profit of over 15,000. Hardly a meager sum. My heart began to beat again, and I saw for the first time the grand interiors of the Reform Club, which had no doubt remained untouched since its founding some 30-odd years ago. The most advanced piece of technology within was a gilded clock set upon the mantelpiece. A few club members were muttering about the impropriety of alighting in front of the club from a steam carriage. I pushed my way through to Monsieur Fogg, who had nearly been swallowed by congratulatory crowds. "You have won the bet, monsieur," I told him, and seized my master by the hand and shook it as though we were two equals and not merely a master and a servant. Monsieur Fogg pressed my hand warmly and did not remark even once upon the impropriety of my gesture. Indeed, though his cool gaze did not so much as waver or soften, I believe he welcomed the chance to shake my hand. "I thank you for your service as my valet, Passepartout," Monsieur Fogg said coolly. "Though you did not perform your duties with particular skill, you were not particularly incompetent either. Steady mediocrity is a quality I admire in a servant. So we weren't great, but we were just solidly average. Oh yeah." With Monsieur Fogg, one had to take one's compliments as they came. "Mr. Fogg, Mr. Fogg," one of the journalists in the crowd cried, interrupting our conversation. "What next for the great adventurer Phileas Fogg and his loyal valet Passepartout?" My master looked at me. I returned the glance. "I have always wondered what is at the center of the earth." I looked around at faces of the assembled crowd and quirked an eyebrow. "Anyone care to wager?" Monsieur Fogg refrained from rolling his eyes. "I believe," he said with great deliberation, "that tonight I will have supper and go to bed. Come, Passepartout, it grows late." "Yes, Monsieur Fogg," I said and followed. Your journey around the world is complete. Celebrated Englishman Phileas Fogg wins round the world wager. Journey completed in 77 days despite exploding Mississippi paddle steamer, arrest in Vladivostok, and American train robbers. So we did have 3 very bad events happen to us. Well, kind of bad. But we still made it. So awesome. Very awesome. And that's it, guys. That's it. Now, I don't think I'm going to do a third Let's Play of this. I might play it on my own, like in my free time, but I think 2 is probably plenty, and especially since we succeeded on this last one. Yeah, I think that's probably going to be it. So, thank you guys so much for watching and subscribing, and I really hope that you've enjoyed it as much as I have. It's been a lot of fun. And I've learned some things that I didn't know about before, particularly geographically. And when I first started playing, I was like, where are some of these places? So I feel like I've grown a little bit wiser by playing this game. So, anyways, thank you guys so much, and I hope you check out some of my other content. It's not necessarily so narrative driven as this is. There's a little bit more to it, a little bit less of me just reading to you. So feel free to do that. And yeah. Until next time, game on.